The first speaker from the opposition, representing Presidency University again, Sohail Abdi. And Sohail will please go to the left podium. Sohail distributes his time between debates, quizzes, history, of which he's a student, cricket, table tennis, and his spare time also is the academic editor of the South Asia Archives. Sohail Abdi.
A very good evening to my fellow debaters, respected judges, respected chairperson, and all others present here. I'm Sohail Abdi from Presidency University. Now, before I attempt to tear this motion into pieces, which reads, social networking is a failure of communication, there are some key terms that need to be defined. Let's start with social networking. Now, social networking is an online service or site that focuses on building social relations among people who share interests, backgrounds, or real-life connections through an online communication. Now, at the very outset, ladies and gentlemen, we can see that the definition or our understanding of social networking itself has included the word communication in it. It shows what an intrinsic part of social networking communication is. It shows how communication is the very basis of social networking. And without communication, there would be no need for social networking. We move on to communication. Let's define communication. Communication is an activity of conveying information through the exchange of thoughts, messages, or information by speech, behavior, or writing. Now that is for you the process of communication. Now if I were to break down the process of communication and show you how it takes place, it would be something like this. The process of communication requires three main things. It requires a sender, it requires a message, and it requires a recipient. Now, the recipient need not be aware of the sender's intent to communicate at the time the message is being sent. This is a very important sentence, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm sure the proponents of today's motion are going to come up here and argue about how troll accounts and virtual stalkers invade and attack the personal and private space of social network users. Now, I must say, even if a message hurts the religious sentiments of a user, even if a message emotionally harasses a user, even if a message causes the user any other way of discomfort, I'm afraid it's still classified as communication. The process of communication is complete when the recipient has received the message from the sender and understood it. That is the end of communication. Even if the recipient takes offense at the message, all that the recipient can do is switch hats with the sender, become the sender himself, send a message, and the sender becomes the recipient. And this is how the process of communication, ladies and gentlemen, is perpetuated to a point of infinity, and it never stops. Now, whether stalking someone on Facebook, whether hurting someone online is a good thing or a bad thing, it's a different debate altogether, and it's definitely a bad thing. But it is still communication, because communication, as I defined it, all that communication requires is a sender, a receiver, and a message, and the process of communication is complete, as I said, once the receiver has got the message and understood it. The need for communication, what communication needs, is for both parties, the sender and the receiver, to share an area of communicative commonality. That's all it requires. And once the message has been sent, the process of communication is successful and complete. Successful, like my speech today, ladies and gentlemen, but not complete. Social networking is but that area of communicative commonality that we get to communicate with people, and it can never fail, but only facilitate communication. Let me give you some examples. We have seen how the Twitter revolution changed the way we saw the countries of Iran, Egypt, Tunisia, Syria, and we have seen how a large part of their political battles were fought on cyberspace, and all of us were hooked onto it because every day we would log in to see if there has been any new development. The news channels started covering it later, but in the initial stages, it was social networking that educated us of the problem and the struggle that the people were facing there. Now, there is a reason why social networking has become the most widely used method of communication in the world today. I have a friend in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was his birthday a few days back. I had a choice between refilling my phone for 50 rupees, calling him for 1 minute, and saying happy birthday. Maybe not hear anything, and maybe he couldn't hear anything, but that's what personal communication is. But even if I write on his Facebook wall a nice long message about how I miss him, about how I remember him, and about how I'm happy that it is his birthday, it serves the same purpose, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what I'm saying. Social networking is also personal. If I want to send a message, the ALSOC reunion is taking place tomorrow, and I'm sure that most of the people who are coming were not made aware of the date of the event by telephone or by a handwritten letter or by word of mouth. Most of them saw it on Facebook. So thank you, Facebook, thank you, social networking, for letting me know about my reunion, and that's how I'm going to come tomorrow. Now, to quickly sum up, the two most important aspects of communication are political and cultural communication. Now, political communication I've already spoken about a little bit. We've seen how regimes in Sudan, Tunisia, Egypt have been overthrown in the recent past. We've seen the Occupy movement. It started in Wall Street. We had an Occupy Kolkata. It came till Kolkata. We have seen how the Anna Hazare movement and the RTI campaign has gathered momentum in our country, and it is all because of social networking. A large part of it should be owed to social networking. Cultural communication. Hardly a month back, Psy and his Gangnam Style have put South Korea back on the cultural map of the world. He sings in Korean, and we dance to it, and we love it. That is the way these ideas are shared. And to end, sir, to say that social networking is a failure of communication is to say that water can't quench my thirst, is to say Alaska is not cold, is to say that the current state government is an effective one. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Sohail, for ending on that completely apolitical note. Can we have a question from, yes? We have a question from the speakers here. Can we have?
Okay, so you spoke about...
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So you spoke about the abuse on Twitter not being a failure of communication because it still is communication. The debate isn't whether or not social networking constitutes communication, but whether or not it's a failure of it. And so if it's having a negative effect, then surely it is a failure. This isn't, and even so, even if we do accept your sort of reading of it, I don't think that you can say that Twitter abuse is communication. It's people putting out unthinking vitriol, which has really harmful effects on people and makes people feel terrible, makes people feel unsafe, makes people feel offended in themselves. How can that not be a failure of communication?
Thank you for the interjection. I would quickly like to rephrase. I did not talk about Twitter abuse. I spoke about how on social networking sometimes people might send someone a message and that might offend that person, but there's nothing we can do about it. Now see, I told you that whether it is a good thing or a bad thing, it's a different debate altogether, and it definitely is a bad thing. But when I told you about the process of communication, it requires a sender, a message, and a receiver. The moment the receiver has understood the message and read it, the process of communication is successful and complete. Whether it irritates the receiver, whether it disheartens him, whether it offends him, is a different story altogether. Thank you for the interjection, but the communication process is complete, and social networking is not failing it, but only facilitating it. Thank you very much.